listeners, welcome back to Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel, a podcast brought to you by Scarecrow Consultants. I'm Jess Korzeniowska. Today I'm joined again by Jon Holt, and we'll continue to look at more lessons learned from careers in systems engineering. Hey Jon, how's it going?
Good, thanks. That's a smashing top you got on there, Jess, if you don't mind me
saying.
Thank
you very much. Thanks. So I'm just smart. I don't often do this, but look, this is a serious occasion.
I was told to dress down, so...
Oh, wow. Okay, so just to remind our listeners, as this is still early days, we ask everybody 2 questions when they come to Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel. First one is, what story would you like to share with us today? And the second is, what valuable lesson did you learn? So Jon, you're used to this by now. What story would you like to share with us today?
Well, this is a story that's actually related to one of my previous stories. So previously I'd spoken about a common language, and in particular me swearing, and that was subtitled the common language. This is kind of the bookend to that, which is also about the common language, but this is about the domain specific language, okay, which is of great importance to everything that we do in the world of systems engineering. So this I can tell you exactly when this took part, when this particular experience took place. And it was on December the 11th, 2003, okay? And the reason that I can tell you exactly when that was, because it was the day that my youngest child was born. So I've got 3 children, so my youngest child was born on that day, and my then wife was in hospital, and there were complications with the birth that I won't go into, but she was in hospital for about 3 or 4 weeks beforehand, and it was all... that we didn't really know what was going on, so it was all, she had to stay in hospital, and it was a very tense time. So obviously I had the other 2 kids at home. Anyway, the day finally came for her to sort of give birth. So I was called in, and they said, look, there's been a bit of a complication. We think she's going to give birth today, and it was a few weeks premature, so we weren't expecting it on that day. So they called me in, so I went dashing into the hospital, which is luckily only a sort of 3 or 4 minute drive from where we lived at the time. So I dashed into the hospital, and I got in there, and my wife was lying on the bed, as people do when they're having babies, and the room was full of, there were some midwives and some doctors and some nurses and some students and some cleaners, and there was me, and we're all looking at my wife like she's a car in a mechanic's garage. Everybody's going like that. And so the head midwife was there, and I should point out at this point that my wife actually worked in that hospital at the time. My wife is a doctor of clinical psychology, so she actually worked in the same hospital. So she's lying there in a building where she actually works, and all these people sort of surrounding her. And there was the head midwife was there, and the head midwife has absolute authority on everything that goes on during childbirth. And so everybody's looking at her, and the head midwife says, we're just going to have to wait for the consultant to come in to get his okay, and then I'll give my okay for us to proceed. So I said, okay. So we stood there, and we waited for about 3 or 4 minutes, and it seemed like a lot longer than that. And all of a sudden the consultant came into the room, and he came through the double doors, and he was wearing those green scrubs, with the outfit with the mask and everything. And he had Wellington boots on, which upset me, because I thought, how much blood are you expecting? It's going to go above shoe height that you're wearing wellies. But so anyway, he came in, and he looked at the midwife and went, oh, and he looked at my wife and he went, oh. Then he looked at the midwife, and they both nodded to each other, and he said to her, yeah, I think we're going to have to section her. Okay, now, if you're involved in midwifery, the verb to section has a very different meaning than if you're a doctor of clinical psychology. Okay, so I just said, where do I sign? But I'd got it wrong as well.
Wow!
And
okay.
So anyway, there was this stunned silence for about 10 seconds, this look of absolute horror on my wife's face. And then it suddenly clicked what had gone on there. And obviously, depending on which particular branch of medicine you're in, that verb has 2 very, very, very different meanings. Like I said, the bizarre thing was, she actually worked in the same building. Now, we live in Wales, and I don't speak Welsh, we were speaking English, so we had the same spoken language, But I guess the big sort of lesson on that day was not the spoken language, it's the domain specific language or the technical language that kind of sits on top of that that's so important. And again, in the world of model-based systems engineering, this is one of the most fundamentally important things that we need to get right, is this idea of this domain-specific language or this ontology. Because it's no good speaking the same spoken language, English, and then not understanding, or even worse, using the same words and having different meanings, if we've got slightly different backgrounds or slightly different experiences and things. So that was the rather terrible, valuable lesson that I learned that day, and I've never lived it down, and I'm single. So.
Goodness me. Well, clearly we're so good at this now that I've telepathically asked you the second question, which was what valuable lessons did you learn? But that's a very valuable lesson. And I'm still thinking about the Wellington boots, and this is quite concerning to me. Well, okay. Thank you for that, Jon. Thanks very much, listeners, for joining us for more lessons learned from careers in systems engineering. We'll see you next time.